In this video, we're going to go over the basics of the Congress of Vienna, which was the meeting that was held by all the other leaders of Europe after Napoleon was defeated to figure out what to do about all the changes he made while he was conquering the continent. So, just to review, at the end of Napoleon invaded much of Europe. He went all the way into Russia in 1812. And as he went through Europe, taking over all this land, he set up sister republics, replacing the royal leaders that were the leaders there before he got to those countries, with his friends, giving those people the Napoleonic Code, and making them sister republics of the French Empire. So basically putting them under his control. The people thought he was liberating them at first. The people thought that he was going to give them democracy, so they actually supported Napoleon to begin with. But then they realized over time that he's actually a dictator trying to increase his power, and the people of Europe actually resent Napoleon coming in and overthrowing their king because of that. He's finally defeated for good at the Battle of Waterloo, like we talked about, by Great Britain and Prussia, and this leaves a power vacuum in Europe, which basically means that all of a sudden you had a leader, the leader was in charge, and instantly the leader's gone, and nobody really knows who's in charge. So there could be chaos, right? People could try to fill that void and get in arguments over who should be in charge. So what now? Well, the countries of Europe are so tired from war. They've been fighting Napoleon in wars off and on for 10 years at this point, from at least 1804, and even earlier for Austria and Prussia against France during the French Revolution. So they really don't want to have more wars over who's going to get what. They're kind of just tired. It's like you get home from work, it's been a long day, you don't feel like cooking, so you order a pizza instead of making your own dinner. It's a lot like that. So the leaders of Europe decide to get together and use diplomacy, which is making agreements peacefully, talking it out instead of war. They want to use diplomacy to fix Europe after Napoleon. So Francis I of Austria, the Emperor of Austria, calls together a meeting called the Congress of Vienna, where they meet in the capital, Vienna, Austria, to talk about what to do after Napoleon. So the Congress of Vienna was a meeting of the great powers in 1814. It starts in 1814, and then Napoleon comes back from Elba, remember when he escapes from the island, and they have to deal with him for the 100 Days campaign, and then once they defeat him at Waterloo, they get back together in 1815 to finish up this meeting. But the five new great powers in Europe after Napoleon are Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and France. So Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, Russia, and France. Now note, this is France after Napoleon. Once Napoleon's gone, France gets invited back to the party. And these countries meet at the Congress of Vienna to reorganize Europe, again, using diplomacy, talking out their problems. So the Congress was partly a meeting to discuss behind the scenes what they should do to reorganize Europe, but it was also kind of a big celebration party that the conservative monarchs of Europe had finally defeated Napoleon. So it was attended by many rich, powerful, important aristocrats and royals. It featured many lavish balls and parties and celebrations, but there were also these behind-the-scenes meetings of diplomats, of country leaders, to determine what to do next. And those meetings were dominated by a man named Clemens von Metternich. So who was Metternich? Oh, by the way, this is a painting of all the representatives at the Congress of Vienna, literally hunched over a map of Europe, carving up who should get what now that Napoleon is gone. So who is Metternich? Metternich was the foreign minister of Austria, which means he was in charge of dealing with other countries for Austria. He was tall, handsome, charming, very popular at this time. He was young. He was young when he became foreign minister because he was foreign minister for 39 years, kind of like the Theo Epstein of Austria. And he served under the Habsburg dynasty. He disliked and did not trust democracy. Why? Because he's rich, he's powerful, and he was born into his position. So we know that that's going to play a role in the deal that they cut at the Congress of Vienna. So here's Clemens von Metternich. So what was the plan that Metternich came up with that everybody agreed to? Well, the first thing he wanted to do is he wanted to encircle France. Make sure that there was a buffer zone between France and the other countries, just in case somebody like Napoleon ever came back to power in France. So to do so, they created a lot of new countries like Switzerland, the Netherlands, Belgium. They created these countries, established them, put a king or a prince in charge as a buffer with France, just to make sure, just in case Napoleon comes back a third time, or anybody for that matter, that France isn't able to just march right through Europe like Napoleon did. They also created a new team called the Holy Alliance, which was basically all the great powers. And these guys had an alliance, and they swore to protect Europe against democratic uprisings. So basically to make sure that if there was ever another revolution, say in Austria, Prussia, Great Britain, Russia, France, all these countries would jump in and help the Austrian government put down that revolution. We want to make sure that the people of Europe are not inspired by the French Revolution to try to have more democratic uprisings. So the Holy Alliance was a deal that said we will all jump in and we will all put down any revolutions that pop up from now on. So here's a map of Europe that shows what Napoleon had done with Europe. So if we take a look at this map, we can see a couple different things that are important. Let's see if I can draw on this map here. So first and foremost, this area right here in the dark purple, you'll have to forgive me, I'm colorblind. This was the French Empire. All of this was controlled directly by Napoleon. It was under his direct control. So this was his French Empire. Now, all of these countries, Denmark and Norway right here, this is Prussia right here, this is Austria, with the exception of Austria and Prussia, all the other territory in this color. So the Grand Duchy of Warsaw, the Confederation of the Rhine, the Kingdom of Italy right here, all of this territory, Spain, even though he had to fight against guerrilla fighters, all of this territory was controlled by Napoleon as sister republics. So anything, with the exception of Austria here and Prussia right here, everything else in the red is what Napoleon controlled by 1812. And as we know, he tried to take the Grand Armée, 400,000 to 500,000 troops, out to conquer Russia, got as far as Moscow, and then because of the winter had to retreat. And that was the beginning of the end of Napoleon. But this is what Europe looked like under Napoleon. It did not look like this before Napoleon, but this is what the Congress of Vienna was trying to fix. So what did the Congress of Vienna come up with? A map that looks like this. And you'll notice it's very different from this map. This map, you'll see Napoleon kind of grouped a lot of countries together here in the Confederation of the Rhine, because they all spoke German, so why don't we put them in the same country? The Kingdom of Italy. Italy was 9 different countries, now it's only 2. So Napoleon changed the map quite a bit. And under the Congress of Vienna, they broke that all back up. Spain gets their country back. Belgium is a new country. The Netherlands is a new country. Let's see, Austria gets most of their land back that they lost. Prussia is going to be in 2 different parts, but they get all their land back. Poland is given back to Russia. You'll see Italy is divided into many different countries like it was before. Switzerland is created right here. So you get the idea. They're going to fix Europe the way that it works best for them. In addition, within this area by Prussia and Austria, we have the German Confederation, which is tiny little countries that all speak German, have been broken back up. They were put together by Napoleon. They're all broken back up, and each one is given a prince or a king or a queen to be put back in charge. And that's because of this idea called legitimacy, which is a concept that the royal leaders and the royal families that were in charge before Napoleon's invasion, they are, according to the people of the Congress of Vienna, the true and legitimate rulers of Europe. So they all got their thrones back through the deal that Metternich created. And that includes Louis's family. Louis XVI was dead. Louis XVII, his son, was dead. So Louis XVIII is his brother. His brother is restored to the French throne, and he is now in charge of France after Napoleon. So, summing it up, there were 3 main parts to the Congress of Vienna. One was to restore legitimacy, to put all the old kings and queens back in power. 2, to create a balance of power in Europe so that these 5 great powers are pretty much equal. Nobody can really run away with the power like Napoleon did with France. And 3, a pledge through the Holy Alliance to stop any future revolutions, especially for democracy, that might pop up. So this was Metternich's plan, and this was the purpose. This is what came out of the Congress of Vienna, And as you can see, Europe is a very different place after Napoleon. But the question you have to ask yourself in this chapter is this: just because the French Revolution failed to change the government in France, does that mean that the idea of democracy and revolting for it is a dead idea? Or do you think the people of Europe are inspired by France and want to create their own democracies? And that's what we'll talk about later in this chapter.